for as long as we've kind of existed, we've always wanted to quantify the things that we inherently feel and experience in our lives. We wanted to take all of these random thoughts that we have in our head and kind of give it some sort of meaning and something that is repeatable and that can be expressed and understood by other people. So we came up with a language. We wanted to keep track of everything that's around us, so we came up with numbers, and we wanted to understand more about how the way the world works, so we came up with math and all these kinds of things like that. Repeat ad infinitum, okay? But one thing that cannot be quantified and probably can never be is the inherent feelings that we have towards things that are creative, anything that is sort of fundamentally artistic in nature. Now, what do I mean by that? For, let's say, if you wanted to build a cool new studio, there are so many things that you can actually quantify with numbers. So if I wanted to get my audio setup right, I'd have to put my mic into a preamp and then put it into a compressor and then maybe do like an equalizer on it. And all of these things have distinct numbers that can be tracked, that can be compared with other things that kind of have an objective basis in reality that is independent of any person who's kind of listening to it, right? I guess the subjectivity comes in what we consider to sound good, but once you have that marker of, okay, this thing is good, then everything from there just becomes matching up the numbers with that as much as possible, right? You can get a camera, for instance, that's the highest quality. It's 4K, it's got 10-bit color depth, whatever, shoots in RAW. You can color grade it, blah, blah, blah. All these sorts of things. You can quantify so much of the process of creating something, but in the end, you can have everything that's by the numbers perfect, but it isn't good. It's just pure garbage. And that's what I mean, that things that are inherently creative can't really be quantified. Now, of course, with everything that I just mentioned, there are quantifiable metrics by which some things can be considered good and some things can be considered bad, right? If I just go into my mic and I just start talking really close to it and I just overblow the audio, then that's not going to be a good listening experience at all. But of course, there are different contexts where maybe that is kind of what I want, and that is what I want to get across, and I do want to go for more lo-fi, blown out, whatever. But let's kind of let's not really delve into the super hyper specific hypotheticals there. But the thing about art is that it should always be driven with an innate kind of feeling at first that is informed by quantifiable metrics. We live in a world today where one of the biggest new technologies that is being pushed all the time is AI. Now, first of all, AI is an incredibly broad term because that is applied to almost anything that you see nowadays is called AI, whether that be like a large language model like ChatGPT, or whether that be like just machine learning or some sort of statistical modeling or anything like that. Everything's kind of called AI now. But I guess what I'll kind of focus on is the more generative artificial intelligence that has a lot of people up in arms all the time over, let's say, Kanye using a like AI voice of him in a song or something like that. Or I guess on like a more universally accepted way, JPEG Mafia using an AI cover of Future's Turn On the Lights for one of his songs, either on or off the drugs, right? There are a lot of instances coming up where generative AI is kind of brought into question, and it's like, will these things one day be able to produce really good art that everyone will come to enjoy, that will be a masterpiece among the likes of Stanley Kubrick and David Lynch and all these other, famed directors? And I think ultimately those things can never come to create good art. And that's because good art is such a complex thing that can really only be processed by the system that is humans. So let's dive into using more of the computer hardware software terminology to talk about this. When we talk about things that we want to be able to quantify, we're talking about all sorts of, just had to make sure I was still recording. We talk about all sorts of different variables and metrics that we use to compare things with, right? If we talk about something like economics, right? We say that there are all sorts of different variables that are involved in the function that is the economy. It's a super simplified example, but yeah, it pretty much gets across the point. When it comes to something creative, let's go back to the studio example. Making a good studio set for, let's say, a podcast. You and your friends want to make a really cool looking podcast where you talk about the latest underground indie films that you guys love, and you guys rate only 5 stars on Letterboxd, and you guys have watched 10,000 movies, but you've only set 5 of them as 5 stars because you love watching movies that everyone says is shit, and you only watch good movies once in a blue moon because you hate yourself. You're trying to design a set for that, and you have all of these quantitative metrics that you can assign numbers to that are kind of like, this is what is objectively good, and you try to maximize those things. If you only try to maximize those metrics, you are not going to be able to produce something that comes across as or gives the feeling of being aesthetically pleasing or being considered good in general. And that's because the way that we understand good to be in an art context is based on so many different variables. So much so that it's kind of become very popular now to say, I like this thing because it has a good vibe. The word vibe is kind of the placeholder that we put to say, instead of like focusing on certain aspects of the story, the cinematography, the art direction, the color correction, the types of camera equipment that they used, the sound staging, the actors' performances, the dialogue, all of these things, right? We kind of lump up all of those different variables into this term that is vibe. And I think we have an innate ability as people to process thousands of different variables and kind of come away with the important thing and say, okay, this is actually what I'm trying to aim for. And we can fixate on that and kind of go ahead with creating the good thing that we're kind of searching for. That's a little bit messy, but I guess in a more concrete example, right? If you're doing something with, let's say you're throwing a ball, right? Anyone who's taken like even a high school course in physics, or much less an undergraduate course in physics, knows that to describe a system that's like as simple as like, okay, I have a ball on a string and I'm going to just move it. How can I describe like the angle that the ball makes? To describe something like that, it is very non-trivial, okay? It takes a lot of pretty hard mathematics that you're going to have to be number crunching away and ultimately take, a couple hours of trial and error to come to a conclusion that if I had just given you a ball on a string and I said, can you make like a 35-degree angle with it? Like what speed would you have to move it at to make a 35-degree angle? You can almost kind of figure that out almost instantaneously, like within just a couple of seconds of just playing around with it, because our bodies are kind of designed, our mind is designed to see these kinds of literally thousands upon millions of different variables that kind of exist in the world and reduce it to their most essential elements and kind of just feel it out, kind of vibe out what is the correct answer or solution that we're looking for. And in the same way that we can do that with, a ball on a string, or throwing a ball, or playing tennis or soccer, if you really want to get more complicated with it, we can also do that with things like the arts. And that's what we actually do. And when you try to quantify what makes something good with computers, unless we reach an age of like, super hyper duper quantum computing where we make a computer the size of the Earth or something, and we're able to do all of these different calculations and exactly simulate the universe. Even if we kind of get to that point, I think the thing that makes art good and the thing that makes art enjoyable is inherently based in our human ability to kind of feel things and interface with the world in a way that is unquantifiable. So that's why I don't think that generative AI in any way will come to make anything that can be considered really good, or I've been using the word good, but what I really mean is great art, is because there's so much involved with it that the way that we design computers nowadays are just not equipped to handle that sort of thing, right? I think the ultimate computer for making a good art piece is the one that we have right now. And that's the human mind, the human body that interfaces, the life that we kind of live, and the way that we're able to take all of these, literally billions upon billions of seconds of data in our life, and we're able to convert that into something that's tangible, that's out there in the world that we can show to other people and kind of express this similar feeling. I think that kind of whole assembly line of things is very unique to the human computer as a brain. This was this is extremely scattered. I did not prepare any of this at all. I should have wrote notes on this, but yeah, I was literally taking a shower. I had a shower thought where I was like, there's someone that I watch on YouTube, and sometimes they get lost in like tangents of like, if they're watching a YouTube video and it's like a cool set design, they'll be like, oh, the compressor is like the threshold on it and the ratio is all off. They should actually have the release, at 50 milliseconds rather than like the 0 milliseconds release that they have now, whatever. And when you get so hyper fixated in those small little details of something that's good, you fundamentally miss out on how to make something that is good in the first place. So, yeah. Don't get caught up in all those small, tiny things, okay? The human mind is built in such a way to be able to extract the most important piece of information given a whole bunch of random crap, right? We're able to dig through the noise, slice through, and get exactly what we need to get. So just do that. If you see something that's like cool creatively that you think is that you really enjoy, that's really impacted you in a way, and you want to kind of recreate that or create something similar, then don't focus on the hyper specifics, kind of focus more on the holistic picture. And of course, you're going to have to become a master at the specifics at some point to make something that's really, really, really good. But the fundamental idea, the fundamental vibe grabbing is the most important thing. And I think that's going to become the most important thing as we move into a future where getting the hyper specifics right will be a lot more automated. Like if I want to get really good audio, instead of having to like literally fucking become masters of audio engineering in order to make something just sound like decent, I'll be able to use generative AI tools to kind of help me to like have the parameters for a setup that is pretty good. And the more that the hyper specifics are kind of dealt with, the more I can kind of spend more time focusing on actually trying to realize the vision that I had in the first place. And of course that comes with some cons, because there is something good, or there is something important about having to go through the specifics yourself to kind of fundamentally understand what's going on. And it does inform your taste and inform your ability to further hone your vision. But it's a whole nother kind of tangent. Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully this is good. It's like 15 minutes. Hopefully. I don't know.